only spent $2,217.56 in March of 2026. Take that, inflation. Everyone thinks that life is so expensive, but you can live large even while living within your means, even with the cost of living on the rise. I will share with you exactly how. You're going to learn 7 tiny habits that you can start right now to save thousands of dollars in a year without sacrificing fun and enjoying life right now. Why, hello, my yellow groupers. I'm Carly, a finance grad and the creator of Best Money Class Ever, where I teach how to pay off debt in 36 months or less, invest to retire a millionaire, and stress less about money. Grab a seat. I'm about to spill the financial tea. Are you ready for it? If you want to save money, it isn't about nickeling and diming every single expense. It's about having small, tiny little habits that you can replicate over time for big, massive savings in the long run. I'm going to share with you 7 copyworthy, tiny little habits that you can replicate. And at the end, you'll see my exact breakdown of my spending in March of 2026. Habit number 1 is to use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without. This is a juicy one. Let me explain and you can simmer on it a little bit. First off, I can't really claim credit to this. This was a phrase that became popular during the Great Depression. During the Great Depression, people lost everything. So they were forced to become incredibly resourceful. So the phrase again was use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without. What that means is use it up. Use what you already have. Wear it out means wear what you have as long as you possibly can. Drive the car until it dies. Keep the clothes winter after winter. You don't need a new coat every year. Make it do means when something actually legit breaks, you still make it do. Do without means, hey, you don't have to have everything you want in this moment. This is the ultimate going green hack. Now, I know everyone is super concerned about the environment, but if you would just simply use what you already have longer, this would be a game changer. So here are a couple examples of how I did that in my life, specifically this past March. I have few things in my life that are currently just breaking and kind of falling apart. Instead of always going out right then and there to replace it, I'll just keep using it. So for example, my comforter, I definitely need to get a new comforter. It's a little bit rickety. I don't know how. It's like tearing and literally kind of falling apart. Same thing with my shoes. If you want to save money, just keep using what you already have for as long as you possibly can. It's a little bitty habit that will help the environment and also help your wallet. The second habit is to borrow, buy used, or shop clearance or discount when it is time to get something new. Here are a few stories of how I applied that this past March. So for example, this past March, I did go to a Renaissance fair and I am all about having fun, doing things with friends, and I got invited, so I said yes. Honestly, it wasn't exactly my cup of tea. Like, that's not really my vibe. I love funness, but it was just something new, so I decided to say yes. Instead of though spending hundreds of dollars on this costume that I'd only just wear once, I was like, hey, can you hook a girl up? My friend who was kind of organizing this was like, girl, I got you. So she ended up lending me her past costume for me to use. So you can always borrow. Another example of this is whenever it is time to legitimately get something. So for example, I have allergies. I found out I'm allergic to dust mites. So I wake up and my eyes are like watering. It's crazy. I ended up getting a recommendation from my eye doctor to get a air filter. So air filters can be 80, 100, 200 or more. I decided to hit up my local thrift store and I ended up getting a used air filter on the cheap just for a few bucks. It was $11.90 with tax and it works just as well as a new one. When it is time to actually get something new, these are a few of my favorite places to get used. There are actually buy nothing groups on Facebook where people, instead of throwing items away, they're just like, here, take this. I don't want this to go in a dumpster. You can pick it up for free. There are also thrift stores of garage sales, consignment stores, Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace. I live full-time in an RV, and then this past year I sold my RV and then furnished an entire apartment from Facebook Marketplace. It's a 1-bedroom that I furnished from scratch for just around $1,000 for everything. The couch, the bed. You can also opt for refurbished items that people have used, like a cell phone, and then they returned it. Also open boxes, or there's plenty of apps like OfferUp or Nextdoor that list things for sale that are gently used that you can snag. When you can't find something used and you do need to buy something new, after you've used it up, worn it out, make it do or do without, and it's time to make that purchase. A few of my favorite discount stores, I really love Dollar Tree. The Dollar Tree has stuff that's legit, like about $1.25 that you can buy. I also do like Walmart, Old Navy, and discount stores like Ross, TJ Maxx, Marshalls, or outlets. For example, this past month, I ended up getting a few new items. It was on my list to get a watch. I'm trying to go a little bit more analog. Instead of always touching my phone to check the time, I wanted a watch, so I got this is the brand from Walmart, Time and True. And then I also bought a literal digital alarm clock. So whenever I wake up, that's not the first thing that I touch. I touch the alarm instead of the phone. And I also did need a helmet. The one that I had literally was breaking. The visor like fell apart. I did a Walmart run and I got 3 things for $49 with tax. And easily people could spend $100, $200 on a watch alone. So try out the discount stores. It is always someone's birthday party weekend in my life, and I love celebrating my friends. So one easy way to celebrate is to show up to a party and give them a little birthday card. So for example, Dollar Tree is always my go-to. I hit up the Dollar Tree. You can easily spend $3, $4, $5 on a card, which just drives me crazy. But if you go to the Dollar Tree, I got 3 cards for $1.52 with sales tax. Another thing that I wanted for March was I wanted to get some rings. They're costume rings from Old Navy. I ended up spending $21.65 versus the name brand. The third habit is to focus on the relationship and experience versus the spending. Here is what I mean by this. You can go out to eat and spend $200 on a dinner with multiple apps, a couple rounds of drinks, or you can go out to dinner and spend $20. Obviously, if you're spending $200, maybe there is a little bit of an extra element of fun and indulgence. However, for me, when I view going out to eat, it isn't about that. For me, going out to eat is about having a heart-to-heart with my girlfriend, showing up if she went through a breakup, hearing the good news if they're expecting a baby, got a job promotion. It is about the relationship, the experience, the time together versus what you're actually spending money on. Another example of that is, for example, when I went to the Renaissance Fair, borrowed the dress and the outfit, did get the ticket to attend the fair, so there was money spent on that. However, whenever I was at the fair, I know a lot of people, any kind of fair that you go to, you can spend so much money on tickets and food and drinks and rides and all the things. I enjoyed the time there. I walked around, did the things. I did want to experience a little bit of the fair food, so I bought some fair food, but I only spent, while I was there, $16.95, and I got myself a nice little gyro and enjoyed time with my friends and dressing up and kind of just seeing how things were going with everybody. Another example of enjoying the experience and the relationships and the people, I did join a dinner group, which was really fun. They match you up with 5 or 6 strangers, and then you get matched to go to a random restaurant. You meet new people, you see new restaurants. It was about the experience of like, oh, this is something new people. And I ended up spending the lowest cost time that I went once a week through most of March, and I ended up spending like $15, including tax and tip, on dinner out at a decent restaurant. If I spent $15 with tax and tip versus $100, I still had a great time and I still enjoyed the food and the company and the night out. Another example of enjoying the experience and relationships, I whipped up a scratch-made strawberry cake, my friends over, and do something fun. I wanted to celebrate Easter. We did that the weekend before, the last week of March, and I had an Easter egg decorating party. So I had hard-boiled eggs, and then we did the Sharpie decorations. All in all, that experience was amazing. We had heart-to-hearts. We shared what was going on in our lives, kind of some struggles and some things that we're going through that were challenging, and felt so much connection and belonging in that experience. I spent $45 for groceries for my entire upcoming week, and just a portion of that was used for the ingredients for the eggs and then also the strawberry cake, and I had an amazing time. Along with that, the fourth habit is to enjoy free hobbies. Now, my hobbies have evolved and changed over my life. Recently though, this year and last year, I have really gone into doing group fitness activities. My goal for this year is to track 200 group fitness activities. Right now, I joined a bike group, and that is my regular thing. I do that 2 times a week, and then I'm also experimenting finding other meetups and hike groups and things around town. Those are free hobbies. You just show up. Granted, obviously you do have to like own a bike. I bought my bike used last year for $100, and like I said, I had to update and maintain my helmet. But in general, these are free hobbies that I meet a ton of friends, have a really good sense of community, and totally enjoy it. It really is a mood lifter to have things like that where you're physically exercising and then also meeting friends and part of a community. I've also done like networking groups, happy hours, and events. Other hobbies that I really enjoy this year are cooking and baking. So for example, I had that Easter egg party and I made the cake. So find what it is that you like doing and enjoy, and that will help you save money. The fifth tiny little habit is to save the most where you spend the most, your housing and your car. I fully believe that you can save on a million little things, but if you get 2 big ticket items right, your house and your car, that makes all of the difference. So if you can buy a home or apartment rent that you can truly afford, and then drive a car that you can afford. Everything else falls into place. For example, I actually went from living full-time in an RV, so obviously my housing was super cheap. I did outright buy the RV with cash, but then I did pay for the lot. I was paying $750 for the lot. And then as I transitioned into an apartment, I spent a lot of time and energy of finding the best possible deal that I could, because I knew that if I lowered my housing, then everything else would be way more affordable. So many people spend $2,000-$3,000 on their rent or mortgage alone, so everything else is gonna feel more expensive. For me, what that looked like is I searched and I saw a lot of places. I did end up sacrificing on a few things. So for example, the one thing that I really wanted with my apartment is I wanted a white and light kitchen, but did not find that. So I ended up finding a unit, and it was actually the cheapest unit in the building, dark kitchen, and they were giving 10 weeks away for free. So my discounted prorated rate is $874. So having that low housing makes everything else so much more affordable. And then on that same note, I also have no car payment. Right now, car payments are crazy high, and I fell into the trap of having a car loan. As soon as I started making money, I thought I had to have this image of success. I felt entitled. I had a car loan. It was $560 for 60 months. Soon after I had that car payment, I was just like, never again. I ended up knocking that debt out, and then decided going forward, I wanted to avoid car payments at all costs. The secret hack is once you are car payment free, you keep taking your old payment, throw that in a high yield savings account, and then you can outright buy your next car with cash, especially if you get a new used 2 to 3 year old car. I ended up buying the car that I have now with cash, and that no car payment makes my budget super affordable right now. The sixth habit is to meal plan. Eating out is expensive. Even fast food is unaffordable. And then don't even get me started on like the Uber Eats. There's the service charges and delivery fee and the tip. It's a lot. If you want to save money, I highly recommend spending a little time and energy on meal planning. It'll save you time and money in the end. I have the process of doing a weekly review. I sit down and think through what appointments, events, things I have going up, and based on what's going on in my life, I plan out my breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I list out my grocery list. With that meal plan, on average, I spend about $40 a week for all of my groceries. Of course, I do go out to eat, like I mentioned, but whenever I do go out to eat, I look for the lower cost items, or I buy apps as meals. When you do meal plan, you save so much money. If you want to learn exactly how, you can grab my financial day planner. It's a day planner and financial plan in one. You'll also get a bonus video on exactly how to save thousands of dollars on your groceries. And the seventh last habit is to use cash. There are two parts to this. First off, buy something you can only pay for in full, and then also physically using cash. Let me explain. If you want to keep your expenses low and deal with the cost of living crisis, if something pops up and you can't outright buy it in cash in full, you want to wait until you can pay in full. By avoiding taking on new debt, you're giving yourself more breathing room in your budget. You're like, dang, she only spent around $2,217 in a month. How is that even possible? It's possible because I paid off my debt and I have avoided taking on new debt. I want you to think through, maybe jot it down on a piece of paper, everything that you're spending right now on your debt. For me, whenever I first graduated, I had that car payment of $560 a month. I was also paying my student loans of about $135. So that was almost $700 of my budget every single month going towards debt. Really prioritized paying off debt, and then once I was out of debt, I wanted to make sure I stayed out of debt. Use so much more wiggle room in your budget. The second part about using cash is I actually physically use cash for my day-to-day spending. I call this my operating expenses. I have a full video on exactly how this system works. You can check it out. But the summary is, whenever I graduated, I really wanted to get my finances in order. I had a finance degree. I read everything I possibly could about personal finance. Across the board, all the experts and gurus were saying, if you want to gain control of your spending, use cash. And I thought, wow, if they're all saying this, there must be something to it. The one thing that I found is they were using what was called the envelope system. You'd have an envelope for your groceries. You'd have an envelope for eating out. You'd have an envelope for entertainment. You'd have an envelope for clothes. You'd have an envelope for the dog's haircut, whatever. And I was like, well, how about we just simplify this and put a set amount of cash just in my wallet and make that last for the week. So weekly cash was born. This little tiny habit, literally every Friday, like clockwork, I go to my ATM and I withdraw a whopping $120 a week for the these operating expenses. I get my necessities first, like my groceries, gas for my car, and then whatever's left is for day-to-day things like hanging out with friends, buying a new shirt, going out to eat, other things throughout the week. So this tiny little habit has allowed me to spend a lot less on the meaningless stuff. So then that's been a big game changer in allowing me to invest a ton and then also to spend guilt-free on what I actually truly value, which for me is traveling. I've been to over 20 countries and really seen the world. Last year, I went to Australia and New Zealand. This year, I want to do a South America trip. Those are 7 tiny habits that you can do too. Let me show you my exact March 2026 spending breakdown and what that looked like in a full completed month. I want you to become CFO and manage your money like a boss too. So everybody talks about keeping a budget. I like to think in terms of financial statements. So there is an income statement which shows your income and expenses, and I do always want to have a profitable budget. In the business world, this is also called a P&L, or profit and loss statement. So for each month, I have what I think is going to happen on my income statement, and then the statement of cash flow shows the actual inflows and outflows in a month. So let's take a look at my actual cash flows for March, and then I'll dive deep into my operating expenses of exactly where that weekly cash went week by week. Let's check it out. This is my March budget. You can see I have my income statement, which shows the income and expenses in a month. So the categories are, we have the income, savings, charity, housing, insurance, services, debt. Those are the fixed expenses. For the flex expenses, like I said, I have my operating expenses and I take out a set $120 cash for the week and make it last. And then the extras that I had anticipated, I call these flex life reinvestments. Like I said, on your income statement, you want to have a profitable budget where you have at least $500 as a buffer you can allocate and spend guilt-free on the areas that are important to you. Other people call these variable expenses, and the categories for those are medical, maintenance, projects, celebrations, travel, and fun. For my extras, I had anticipated seeing an eye doctor and having an $85 copay. For my maintenance, I anticipated having a toll tag and an oil change for both $50 each. And then I did anticipate having a flight to Wisconsin for a friend's wedding, spending $320. I also anticipated having a pickleball league that was going to be $60. I wanted to see Cardi B for $75. The statement of cash flow shows what actually happens. You can see my inflows and outflows in the month. We have my starting balance. I usually keep just a buffer of about $1,000, nothing too crazy. And then we have my income, which is what I pay myself, and then my expenses. So for example, my rent was $874. I had water and trash fees. All in all, that was $944.66. Internet of $65. That was a service expense. First week of March, I had my weekly cash of $120. I had what's called rollover cash of $30.08 from the previous week in my wallet. So I started that week with $150.08. I went out to eat and I spent $26 including tax and tip. I did go to the Renaissance Fair and I spent $16.95 on food at the fair. I did need to get a prescription for $508. That was the copay. I put $20 gas in my car. I got Old Navy rings for $21.65, and your girl loves some Taco Bell. I got beef burritos, no onions. That's my classic order for $431. I categorized that as food and drinks. And then my groceries that week was $39.37. I had rollover ending cash of $16.72. Then the following week, I ended up registering for Sports and Social Club for my pickleball league. That ended up being $69.95, and I categorized memberships and leagues as extra fun expenses. I did have the Renaissance Fair. The ticket for that with the fees was $33.48. I also categorized that as fun. I had renter's insurance. That's a set fixed expense that is categorized as insurance. That was $9.59. And then the next week I had weekly cash of $120. So that week I had the starting cash of $16.72 plus the $120. So I had $136.72 of my operating expenses. I went out to eat with a dinner group and I got me some Tex-Mex for $15. That week, I went to the eye doctor and he said, girl, you need to get yourself an air filter. I spent $11.90 at the Goodwill. For groceries that week, I spent $41.42. I put $25 gas in my car and I have a sweet tooth. So I got some candy for $4.30. At the end of that week, I had $39.10 left over in cash. The following week, I had my electricity rollover, which was $104.16. I do categorize that as housing. I did pay myself $12.50, and then I had a gym annual fee of $64.94. That is a one-time expense, but I did categorize that as service. I did take out weekly cash again for $120. So that week, I had $39.10 rollover from the previous week plus $120, so I had $159.10. I went out to eat for $26 at a pizza place. I did a couple of Walmart runs. I got some moisturizer and nail polish for $21.41. And then, like I mentioned, at Walmart, I ended up getting a watch, an alarm clock, and a helmet for $49.48. And then my groceries that week were $25.27, with ending cash and operating expenses of $36.94. The following week, I ended up buying flights to the wedding. I thought I was going to spend $320, but I ended up doing a little finagling and ended up getting my tickets round trip for $127.96, which is crazy, I know. But what I'm going to do is I found tickets. The wedding is actually in Milwaukee. I'm actually going to fly in a day early and go to Chicago. The tickets were super cheap, and I'm going to do a train ride from Chicago to Milwaukee. I did get the tickets with like no carry-on included, so I'm just going to take a backpack. We'll see how that goes. And then the next expense in my cash flow was my car insurance, which was $134.08. And then I have health insurance that was $215.81. I did have 2 donations for my niece and nephew. They had like a book fair that kind of randomly came up, and I donated just $21 for both of them. And then my actual gym fee was $37.88. I categorized that as service. And then I had weekly cash of $120. And so the cash expenses that week, I started with the $36.94 from the previous week plus the $120. I went out to eat and I spent $21. I went to Target and got some skincare cleanser for $9.73. My groceries that week was $45.12, and that was the week that I ended up hosting my Easter egg decorating party, and I got the ingredients to do a yummy strawberry cake. I did also go to Specs, hosted an adult Easter egg hunt, and got some supplies to have mini little alcoholic beverages for the adult Easter egg hunt, which was super fun. So I spent $19.30 at Specs. My operating expenses, I put $35 gas in my tank. I did treat a friend of mine had a birthday, so I treated at a bakery and spent $10.15. And then, like I mentioned, I got some birthday cards for $152 at the Dollar Tree. My ending weekly cash that week was $15.12. And then if you hop back over for my statement of cash flow, I ended up having another paycheck of $12.50. And then unfortunately, the pickleball league, I got refunded $69.95. So whenever I get a refund on my statement of cash flow, I do a negative sign. And what that does is it lowers what I spent in that category. All in all, you can see I have an annual budget summary. I like to look at what my budget was for the month versus what I actually spent. And then I see the annual budget for each of those categories and then the year to date actual. All in all, for March, I spent $2,217.56. One thing I do here, though, is I actually don't classify savings or charity as part of my living expenses because I'm not necessarily living off of that. This is what I need to function without my investments or savings or charity. Inflation is definitely on the rise. That means now more than ever, you do need to be smart with your money and find these tiny little habits to save big. As a recap, these habits are: use the saying from the Great Depression, which was use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without. This is the ultimate way to go green to save the environment and your wallet. Habit number 2 is to borrow, buy used, or shop clearance or discount when it is time to actually buy something. The third habit is focus on the experience plus the relationships versus actually spending money. Enjoy the people around you, enjoy the relationships. Whether you go out and spend $20 versus $200, it's about the people that matter. Habit number 4 is find free hobbies that you can enjoy. Habit number 5 is to save the most where you spend the most, your housing and your car. Spend some time up front knocking out that debt with your car loan to not have that car payment anymore. And then also, if you're in a rent or situation that is way too expensive, make some moves to lower those big expenses. That will make all the difference in your overall budget and help you save every single month going forward. Habit number 6 is to meal plan. It is so worth it. You'll save time and money when you just simply map out your meals ahead of time and have a plan with your groceries. And habit number 7, lastly, again, is to use cash. You want to make sure you're only spending money that you actually have. And so that means avoiding taking on debt and payment plans. And then you can try my hack of weekly cash, of literally physically using cash to pace your spending throughout the week. As a disclaimer, this is for a household of one. If you have a partner and kids and family, obviously you would take out more cash than what I would as a single household. I am here to hype you up. And now it is time for a best money class ever money win. And this one is a good one if you feel overwhelmed by creating a budget and getting organized with your finances and all your expenses and all the things. If that is just too much, this one is for you. Zoe writes in and she said, I didn't know how to budget and I wanted to get it together. She said the breakdowns of really complicated topics into step-by-step processes made it super easy to understand. The class is great. All of my questions were answered. I absolutely love that for her. And that is exactly why I created Best Money Class Ever. I want to break it down for you So it's not complicated, it's simple, it's easy, and you got a plan. If she can understand money, you can too. I hope you start these tiny little habits to save money. I am really curious and would love to hear from you. What tiny little habit can you start today to save big? Spill your financial tea and leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify. Thank you, my yellow groupers, for listening. Every single show has a dope name that they call their listeners. I am calling you my yellow groupers. We have slow starts, we get off track, we get behind, we get knocked down. We've been through some things. Nothing comes easy. The cards are stacked against us. The hands we are dealt are not ideal, but we don't ever give up. That is where our grit is born. Our trials, our adversities, that is what makes us stronger. Did you like this episode? If so, like it and subscribe. Be sure to share it with your friends who also geek out over personal finance. Leave me a 5-star review wherever you're listening. It really helps others who are on a mission to pay off debt and invest find this show. If you've been meaning to get your finances in order, now's the time, and this is the best place to start. Here, you'll overcome analysis paralysis with the finance plan. This is the roadmap that you've been looking for to pay off debt and invest, even if you have no idea where to start and you're living paycheck to paycheck. Are you tired of figuring this money stuff out on your own? You don't need to spend a lifetime stressed about money. You can turn things around in a month. I will show you exactly how. Best money class ever is my live and virtual 4-week personal finance class. Think of me as your personal finance consultant to help you get the results you want with money. Enrollment is currently closed. You want in? Get on the waitlist. Head on over to bestmoneyclassever.com or the link below. You'll instantly get a 20-page guide with the finance plan so you can start a plan to pay off debt and invest now. As always, remember you only live once. Be smart with your money now. I'll catch you later. Bye.